Hey, welcome everybody to Spin Legal on Wednesday, the 26th of June, 2024. Hey, we're more than halfway through the year. We haven't been doing that many of these, have we? Are we 26 episodes in?
Yeah, we had them every week, okay, when we started.
When did we go from the beginning? When was our first episode? We'll have to look that one up.
Yeah, we'll have to look it up. I think
Yeah,
we started with we didn't always use StreamYard, I think. I think we used
yeah,
the other thing you had before, the
yeah.
OBS.
OBS.
Yeah,
OBS.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so today we're discussing the questions you should be asking your lawyer or paralegal about the costs associated with your representation. And to remind everybody that if you need to contact Invictus Legal, you can do so on 905-688-5598. And you can email Angela at angela@weareinvictus.legal or me at peter@weareinvictus.legal, or contact our website on https://weareinvictus.legal. All right. And I will put the link in the comments below. Well, in fact, I'll put the whole thing into comments below.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that people know how to contact us, and if they
Yeah.
want to reach us in some way and suggest a topic for any future show, hey, that would be also a way that you might want to contact us as well as talking to us about a potential matter that you might have.
Yeah. Okay. So the the first part of any legal engagement usually starts with a consultation. So here's the first question in our series today that relates to the whole question about payments for legal services. So, will I be charged for a consultation?
Yeah, well, this is common. You see legal firms advertising all over the place and paralegal firms, half an hour free consultation. Okay, what is a consultation exactly? It's not legal services and it's not legal advice.
Yeah,
Right? But sometimes you just want to hear maybe some brief answers to questions, just to at least clear your head about whether you're going to decide to take action or not. Okay? And then sometimes people are just very confused as if there is a way to go and take action. Okay? So you might want to have a little bit more than just a sales job, which basically what these other free consultations are about. Okay? So when you come into a place like into Invictus, okay, we do charge for some of our consultations. In fact, most of them. Some of them we just generally with the ones that I handle, a lot of times if somebody comes in and they do a consultation and then decide to retain our services, then I put the amount that's charged for the consultation into the retainer
yeah,
and then just work on the case.
yeah.
Others in my firm may not do the
Well,
same.
the point though is that sometimes in a consultation, I know there's an element of chit chat in a consultation, and part of that is, hey, hey, Angela, like, tell me a little bit about yourself. So I need to know. I'm trying to judge from you telling me about you as to whether you're the sort of person that I think will represent me well.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, that's
And,
sometimes
and
it's
again,
also getting to know the legal
yeah,
representative, and it's generally what I look at if somebody's going to come in and if I'm going to charge them for a consultation, it's because I'm going to give them a little bit of advice, enough so that they know that this is kind of an opinion, okay, on based nothing with respect to doing a full suite of services or even starting to write a letter or anything, but perhaps somebody comes in and says, okay, do I have a right here? Do I have any rights? That kind of thing. So I can tell you that. And I usually would follow up with some kind of letter saying, okay, as we discussed, you may have some rights in this area. But
yeah,
as with respect to our limited consultation and our limited review, that would be the case. But if you feel that you would like to take the next step, please give us a call and then we can follow through on that.
Yeah.
So this is one of the things that a lot of people won't get because you're dealing with a service. It's a professional service, which is just services are much more difficult or less tangible than if you're buying a product. Like you're not buying a vehicle here. You're
Yeah.
not buying groceries or even a good ice cream cone or anything. You're just
No, and this is
beer
where
and
actually
beer.
things need to be done differently.
Yeah.
And I would think one of the most important questions that anybody who's coming into a law office should ask is how do you cost your services, right? So on what basis am I going to be paying for the advice that I get?
Yeah.
Now,
Some of the
typically
services,
you would
like
expect the answer to be you're going to be paying, you pay by the minute
depends. Yeah, this is one of the things I
on an
always get
hourly
about
basis.
the legal profession. You ask a legal professional anything, and they'll say it depends.
No, but the principle is that, for example, most people who would come into our, into the office, typically most types of work that we do will end up being what's called a retainer type.
Yeah, there's
Retainer.
retainer agreements people get on.
Yeah,
There's ongoing retainer agreements, like
yeah,
if you're coming
and
to us for several types of cases. There's
yeah,
also just a general single retainer agreement.
and
There's a
so
limited scope retainer
yeah,
agreement. And then there's also certain types of agreements where we might look at charging you things like, say, I could do the plaintiff claim, then you pay so much for that, you come back. Can you attend a settlement conference and we can do that? There's just different ways of doing it.
yeah.
And we try to cost things out and like to the best effect possible so that first of all we're getting fair compensation for the work we do and also so that it's not overly expensive. But
But
the
it's an
problem with
important.
legal services, like any type of professional services, like taking your dog to the vet or going to the dentist and getting a filling or anything like that, it's
Yeah,
not exactly cheap. None of these
yeah,
services
and
are
and
cheap.
and hey, you should all. One of the questions you do need to ask is how do you charge for your services, right? Get an idea about that. And okay, so we were talking about this before the show, and we basically came up some of the methods, not all of them. Some of the methods of charging are by retainer, by contingency, by block fees, by limited scope. And there's a question really about, well, you'll probably then be saying, hey, what does that all mean?
Yeah,
So,
there's different ways of doing that. Retainers is a very common way where paralegals and lawyers would take you and they would charge you on an hourly basis. They would take a certain amount of money down. Sometimes it's $500 down, sometimes it's $2,000 down, depending on the type of case that they're looking at. And sometimes it's depending on the type of action. Hey, if you're looking at going to trial or if there's a lot of costs ahead of you for this sort of thing, the higher the retainer would be. It doesn't mean that that's the only amount of money that you'll ever owe for this. It's
yeah,
not a flat fee by any means,
yeah,
but you are instructed within the retainer how much is the hourly fee or how much is it per stage or whatever. It depends on the type of case you're looking at. There's cases that I do that I get and that I would just charge a certain flat fee. For example, I would do an ODSP case and I would charge a certain amount because I got you on ODSP.
yeah.
And it's a reasonable amount for the type of work that I do, and it's always the same type of work I do to do this.
Okay. So let's explain payment by contingency. That's one that's often brought up by a lot of people.
Yeah, people come in and they ask us, "Oh, you're taking me. We got to go to the landlord-tenant board, and I'm a tenant. My landlord is really messing me around, and I live in a place with black mold and everything." Hi, Robert. Hey, and I was just kind of wondering, is there a way that you could charge me only if I win? No. But however, personal injury lawyers,
Well,
Okay?
I
If
was
you
going to
get
say
hit by
that,
a
Theo.
motor vehicle, yes, many
Yeah,
times they do, because the reason they can is because this is all charged with an insurance company,
yeah.
and they're dealing through an insurance
Well,
company.
it's important to also note that there are areas where it is not legal to charge a contingency fee. For
Mhm.
example, if
Criminal,
you are
family.
a criminal case, you cannot charge a contingency fee. It must be an hourly rate. And the whole point is that
Mhm.
you can't charge a contingency. Oh, I will pay you if you keep me out of jail. No, that's not going to
No,
happen.
no, because the thing
Not
is that's
possible.
because
And
that's
again,
guaranteeing.
let's be another
Guaranteeing,
one.
and you can't do that. We can't guarantee anything.
Yeah, and let's put another one in here. Oh, I'll pay you if I don't get evicted. Not possible.
Nope.
No.
These things we can't.
Um,
We can only promise to provide professional services that are known to be effective in most cases to help people, to reach the goals that you're trying to reach.
yeah,
It doesn't necessarily mean that if I do X and Y, that you're going to get Z. No, we can't guarantee you that. But we can guarantee that we will do X and Y because X and Y guarantees does work 90% of the time,
yeah.
right? And
Okay,
what we do is we try our best in terms of our skills and our professional experience, and we'll give you an estimate in terms of how much time that might take and what you could expect, if we
yeah.
do have to go all the way through a litigation.
Okay. So the next one in this list is block fee retainers. So
Okay.
that basically is about a fixed block of work for a fixed price.
Yep.
So
I've done
I'm
them before, and these can be done. There are many paralegals that charge on this, and it's comforting for them. Okay, we don't because a lot of our cases we get are very diverse. Okay, but if, say, for instance, if you were working and doing legal work for a collection agency,
yeah,
and then you write the claim and then you send it out, you service, that could possibly be broken down into a block fee.
yeah.
Okay, so much
A
to write
block a
the
block
claim, so
fee.
much to serve,
Yeah,
so much to go to a settlement conference, so much
yeah,
to go to court, all this stuff. So these are
exactly.
things where things are done the same way all the time, and there's certain parts of your fee, and they're spelled out in the retainer agreement as to what they are. And as
Um,
the client, you have certain expectations about what we expect of you, and you have certain expectations of us, okay, in terms of our block fee arrangements. So if I'm charging you, I'm just going to say $500 for a certain part of the block, okay? This doesn't mean that you can call me every day because it's only going to be $500 while I'm working on this. This is not something that is on a regular retainer, okay?
yeah,
This is
oh,
just
yeah,
something that I'm doing. I got to write up your claim, okay? That's
yeah,
the first part of it, okay? Then it
yeah.
goes in there, and so that's how a block fee works. And many paralegals charge some of their services on a block fee, same as some lawyers do.
Okay.
I've seen some lawyers attempt to do that for family law, for example.
Yeah. Okay. Limited scope. Well, actually, another block fee one. Another block fee one often is things like closing on real estate,
Oh yeah,
because that's a fixed price block of work that is done. I don't know. Let's call
they
it.
got a checklist of work to
Yeah,
do. They go
exactly.
through the
It's
checklist,
fifteen
and
hundred
it's done.
dollars for. It's
Yep,
$1,500, and it's tick 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 tick, and the vast majority of that is done by the law clerk.
yep. And then it gets done, and then the lawyer gives you the bill, and there it
Yep.
is.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
I've
So
had
let's talk now then about, let's move on to limited scope and fixed fee work.
Yep.
So
Wait,
limited
wait,
scope
yeah.
is basically what you're coming into is, okay, for example, one example of limited scope is a legal letter. You gonna write to somebody who owes you money, and but you've written to them 3 times before and they've never done a damn thing for you. So why do you come to a legal firm? Because even if we write the same words as you do, it's about that extra punch in the thing. If you don't do this, we will be going to court, and
Mhm.
There's a certain call to action on that, right?
There's certain legal consequences for all
Yeah,
these things, and we can
yeah,
name the acts. We can name the legal procedures that can follow. Okay? And it also says on our letterhead, as you can see on the top right, Invictus Legal LLP. Okay?
yeah.
Because that's where we are. When you see a legal letterhead, then people say, "Oh God, these people are legal professionals. I better watch my step."
Yeah.
Okay? Because that means they're involved. And if I don't respond, okay, then they may get further involved, and then I'm in deeper doo doo.
Okay, so one of these first things in we were talking about payment by retainer. Basically, a payment by retainer, normally what'll happen is you go to a lawyer or something, or you go to a paralegal, and let's say for whatever the work is, it doesn't really matter. But for example, and I'm going to use this example, we can sure your lawyer paralegal says sure we can do the work for you, not a problem. Just deposit a $5,000 retainer and we can get on with the work, right?
Yeah,
Now, when it comes to other forms of work, like say like block fee retainers, what you're basically talking about is, yeah, we can do this part of the job for $1,000, and basically whether you spend 15 minutes doing it or 15 hours doing it, you've agreed a price $1,000. It's a fixed
yeah,
price. It's the
yeah.
way it
That's
is,
the
right?
block.
Um, Now, then, limited scope retainers, on the other hand, are also fixed fee, but that's like writing a legal letter, so it's a
Yeah,
smaller amount. So that's typically let's say $500 plus HST.
yeah. One or
That's
two tasks,
yeah,
you're asking
one
us
or
to
two tasks.
write an opinion,
Yeah,
or you
yeah,
might even want an opinion letter on
yeah.
something. You're giving me
So
a copy of a contract, and you're asking me, what does this mean? Is this person in breach or not?
yeah. Then the next thing is that one of the things about the retainer, I said, so in the first place, payment by retainer, and I've just used the example of you pay $5,000 down. That doesn't mean to say it is only going to cost you $5,000. That means
Or even all
you're
of it?
paying a retainer to your legal representative in the amount of $5,000. That means that any future work that comes up after the $5,000 has been spent, your legal representative may come and say, Miss Brown, I think we need an extra $1,000, please.
Okay, and I ask you for what?
Now, well,
You did
absolutely.
nothing. I gave you $5,000. You did nothing.
The whole point is that yes, and that's a fair question. It's not that you did nothing. In fact, actually, that's the point where we need to provide you with
With the
a
statement.
statement of activities. So everything we've done on the account, here you are. Thank you very much.
Hmm.
Right?
Yeah, and that's where a layperson can look at it and say, okay, you wrote a letter, you did this, you commenced a statement of claim, you filed it in the court, you sent it to a person, they replied with a defense, then you looked at it again, you said, oh, this deserves a counterclaim. So
Yeah.
they put a counterclaim in. You have to file a defense to the counterclaim. So there's a number of different things that could have been done, but as these steps take place, the client should be consulted. So before the claim goes out, the client could see it and say, okay, I like this part, I like most of it, but I need these two changes. So,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
okay, two changes get put in and they get sent out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So let's talk about how these methods compare. Methods of payment compare.
Okay.
Do
Well,
you think is there a best way to make a payment?
definitely, sometimes it just depends on the type of work you're doing, depends on the type of amount of work that the client is asking you to do, and also depending on the skill, etc., that's required for the work that you're doing. Like, for example, somebody who's writing a legal letter, and then somebody who's doing a complicated municipal license application. There's a difference in terms of the kind of knowledge that a person needs. Okay, so
Yeah.
one of them may be more than the other. Like the
And
municipal licensing app may be more. Okay, so
oh
we
yeah.
have to look at what the degree of skill is required and degree of experience. And then the other thing to look at too is, like, is it better to do block fees or fixed fees? Some
Well,
paralegals will swear
something
on block fees that they do very well on block fees. But the
was some.
key is fitting the right amount of fee per block.
Yeah,
Okay?
I was going to say one of the things about it is, for example, there are some things which are predictable. And I used the example earlier on when talking about fixed fees. I used the example on closing a house purchase. That is one thing where there's basically a checklist. You basically go through an entire checklist, tick, 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 tick. Um, you know, now we need to basically make sure we've got the mortgage in place in order that we got mortgage funds in the trust account in order to close tomorrow.
Yep.
Those are steps that you're going through that are
And those
specific,
kind of
right?
adjustments and
Yeah.
all that.
And,
Yep.
and there's a whole set of things. So the whole point about a fixed fee position like that is that it's enabled to you for you to make money during by doing that work, but also also give value to the client. So there's a fixed fee in order to make you money as the legal professional, and to give the client value for money. So
Yep.
that's the purpose of doing it that way. But for example, I also look at when you look at contingency, for example, personal injury. What you don't know when you come out of hospital, your leg is bent in 16 different positions, and now you're saying, oh my God, I need to see a lawyer. So the first thing you do is you convince your significant other to take you to the next available lawyer, and you're saying, hey, I need to sue the B star for $1 million. And the lawyer, first of all, says, hey, wait a minute, you're not going to get $1 million out of this. Well, not unless you happen to be George Michael or
Mhm.
somebody like that. But the
Your
point
personal
is,
injury has its own formula, believe me.
it has
Chart,
its
they
own
call it.
formula. But the point being is, even with contingency fees on personal injury, sometimes there are several options, because what they might say is that, okay, what you'll need to do for me is you'll need to go and get medical reports. So we need to actually know and see all the medical reports that relate to you, how that is, what your current position is. That enable us to actually advance your case. So you do the medical reports, and that costs money. So you're now going to have to go, let's say, I don't know exactly what a medical report is, but let's say $100 out of pocket to send your lawyer your medical report.
Mhm.
They might, well, or there's other types of contingency. So they might take, if you're paying a certain amount up front for things like medical reports or other reports that you might well need, you may get the contingency fee might well be lower for the lawyer than if the lawyer takes all the risk.
Yep,
And
there's different ways
yeah,
that, like your contingency agreement that you have with your lawyer. Right now, the Law Society regulates what these contingency fees must say. And also, there are variations within the contingency fee arrangements, like who pays the disbursements, how much
yeah,
the contingency arrangement is for, different things like that, and what happens if the client quits in the middle of a case, okay, and wants
oh,
to
yeah.
go to a different lawyer. So there's different things that they have to include in the contingency arrangement.
Or even if they pull out of the case altogether.
Yep.
Hey, my twisted leg is no longer twisted. I'm playing baseball again, and just been
Healed
offered
overnight, in
a
other words.
deal with the Blue Jays. Hey, I'm great. I'm great. I don't need my personal injury claim anymore,
Yeah,
right?
and the language is, I don't want to pay.
Yeah, but where you are, what I mean by that. Okay, so the question here is, those methods are all very different, and they
Yeah,
all each have their own applicability. As we said, you can't have contingency for a criminal charge,
yeah, you can't have
right?
criminal charge, family law cases, certain other types of cases too. Hey, you can't have, like,
Yeah.
You're allowed on landlord tenant, but it's limited by the legislation. But I don't know too many people who do contingency at the landlord tenant board.
Can't,
Its
I
landlord
can't
tenant board
envision
is very, very difficult and unpredictable.
I can't envision any circumstance where you do contingency,
Yeah.
right?
Other than
Uh,
an excellent slam dunk T5.
yeah, but again, that's probably the only circumstance that
Mm,
But I wouldn't do So on a T5, it's a fair one where you're talking about a bad faith eviction. For where the landlord's moving in and the landlord doesn't move in, but actually moves another tenant in your place
mhm.
at 3 times your rent. Well, that is probably the only one where you could potentially talk about contingency, in my mind.
Yep,
Right?
I've had a few others that score pretty high too, but it's just that it's very hard to predict in that
Yeah.
because I've seen cases with very similar facts and similar levels of evidence between two different adjudicators to get two different answers and two different
That
results.
that is one of the biggest problems about things like the board is you do get different, two identical cases handled by two different adjudicators come out with two different results.
Yeah, and it's not the adjudicator's fault. It's just that sometimes certain issues of the cases maybe have a more focus, and sometimes how the representative or the client presents it. So
Okay.
there's many factors that could lead to that.
Okay, so let's go back to fixed fee. What does a fixed fee cover, and will I be charged for any other costs?
A fixed fee generally is your fees plus HST. And if there is other costs, like say for instance, if you have to file
Postage.
something, that would be over and above. But
Yeah.
they're identified in the contract as to what they are.
So, for example, if you were going to do, you know, if it was an hour's worth of work at $200 an hour, that's $226. And you were going to charge 2 hour, you're going to charge 565 for the fixed fee because it's a 2 hour block of work,
Half off.
but it's a $13 postage thing. So you'd be charging 570, 570, hang on.
578.
578 is what I was going to say, but then I doubted my math,
I'm
my
the
mental
math person
arithmetic.
around here. I handle all the money, so
Anyway, yeah, I knew what it was. I just didn't have the courage to say it.
same as
Okay,
like somebody would do this. It says, "Would you put together my plaintiff claim and file it?" So you just draft a plaintiff claim and say it takes you so much. Oh, paralegal student. Hey, Angie. Hello, Angie. Thank you so much for doing these lives. I am a paralegal student. Every bit of information is very helpful. I'm glad somebody was talking to me about how Humber was one of the class at Humber was talking about our spin legal.
yeah,
How
when
we're
that,
getting into people's
yeah,
classrooms. This is
yeah,
neat.
yeah. Well, okay, so and that's interesting. That's good. So essentially, with any of these retainers, whether it's fixed fee or not, if you want to continue the relationship, for example, you're writing a legal letter that says it's a debt collection letter. Let's say, for argument's sake, and you write the letter and often you send it off to whoever, and they just turn around and say, piss off. Not in a million years will I ever pay you. You're a slimy, ugly bastard type thing.
Yep. So these are
So what
different.
is your next? So what is your client's next course of action?
Yeah.
Sue the bastard.
Yep. Sue the bastard. Yep. Yeah, that's what we do. We do
And
sue for a
hey,
living.
and hey, I say it not in the derogatory term, but in the Alan Bastard way.
Oh yes. Well, remember he's British, right? When people are British, they could be excused a bit for their language, right? And
we
the
have
word
the most colorful. We have the most colorful tongue in the world.
Oh yes, oh yes. If you ever watch those British sitcoms and stuff, then you'll know exactly how people like Peter think. But
Right.
anyways, the whole thing with this is we have, and because sometimes you'll be for a fixed fee, you send a letter, something comes back, blah 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 blah. Then the client says, "I'm not happy with this. Is there a next step? Do we can sue? Hey, I
Yeah.
want you to sue them for me. How
Yeah.
much will it cost you to sue for me?"
Yeah.
Then you could start another type of arrangement, maybe a retainer to sue. Hey, so that could be another thing. So that would happen. Hey, after that. Hey, then that person retains you for the next file, which is to sue them. Hey, for the the debt that they owe you. Hey. So this is like these kind of fees are very complex. Like it's sometimes not as well understood. Some people think paralegals and lawyers overcharge because they think that we're rich. Okay? And talk to anybody, particularly those in small firms or in solo practices. There's not a lot of wealthy people in them. And, you know, the larger firms, maybe at the very top, you might find a few wealthy people.
Hey, we have to double the size of our firm, Angela, so
Oh,
we
yeah.
can become wealthy.
Yeah.
You
Well, we
know,
got to go
stop
out and
scratching,
kidnap a few
stop
other people
scratching.
with cup in hand.
Yeah, stop scratching around in the dirt for money, eh?
Yeah. Well,
That
that's a
would be good,
problem.
wouldn't it?
That's a
Okay, all right. So moving on to another question. So if a client says, "Hey, can I have an estimate of what my final bill will look like?" What's your thoughts on that?
That's a little bit uncomfortable. Like people want us to give a ballpark figure, and the problem that you don't want to get stuck with is that as a professional, you don't want to get stuck to it. Like, so you say, well, at the end of the day, it'll cost about say $3,000. Okay, and say what happens during the course of litigation if a lot of unexpected courses of event
Yeah.
occur, and then there's motions filed and or a counterclaim filed, other types of things happening, or you can't find a couple of witnesses and you have to search for them, things like that that happen, and your bill's already over $3,000. Okay? And then they say, well, you promised that it would stick to $3,000. You don't want to get into that type of situation. Okay? You want to be able to be realistic and be able to say, okay, that this could range between this and this. Sometimes you can give a range, okay? And then sometimes if you don't have to go to court, it would be less. So it depends on a lot, like a lot of times I'd like to know, like it's even different than constructing a kitchen in your house. Yes, there
Oh
could
yeah.
go up 10% or so because you're allowed to have a 10% increase because of the sometimes there's different overruns or our supply cost increases, things like that that could happen. But again, a construction of your house is a tangible issue. Okay,
Yeah.
like your cupboards are only going to be a certain size because there's a measurement that's involved. Okay, and you have a construction or a cabinet maker that's doing them, so they do a very specific job for you and they hang it up in a specific way. These
Yeah.
things are all done in a very particular way. Okay, but when you're dealing with a lawsuit, it involves a human factor. Okay, human beings react differently
Yeah.
than things. Okay, they even
Well,
react differently than animals.
you see, you get the lawsuit that drops on your lap, and you get one defendant who just says, "Thing it in the drawer. I'm done with this. I don't want to know about Joe Smith," and the other goes, "Oh, he's decided to sue me. I am going to get the bastard, right?
Yep, I'm gonna sue them back.
I'm going to sue him back,
So
right?"
pretty soon
So
there's a lawsuit
yeah,
and lawsuit,
so
and
there's
that gets complicated
yeah,
when there's
so
countersuits.
exactly. So there's two separate things. In one instance, you're kind of going to likely go to default judgment, and then you're going to ask the judge for an assessment potentially of your case, or you might, it might be for a fixed cost and you get an assessment on that basis. And on the other, it's a boxing match.
Yep,
You're going
like
to
it could be within the same
yeah,
case. Like you could be suing two defendants. One of them gets defaulted. you put the other one noted in default, and then the other one chooses to countersue and file motion after motion and so forth. And, it complicates the whole mess
Yeah.
because humans are human.
Yeah.
And we don't have an on and off switch. If we did, and we could put duct tape over people's mouths, we can control that, but we can't. And this is why we don't always estimate. But we can only give you some experiences and some examples of certain things that have occurred before, that if things work out well, it would be ranged between this and this, meaning that if it works out predictably.
Yeah. Okay, I've got another one here. And here is one I'm going to tell people, first of all, think about your cost of living over the last year or so, because this is a crucial part of how this question needs to be thought about. Can costs change over time? Darn right they can,
Yes, they can.
because we've just been through massive, in the last year, we've just been through massive inflation. In fact, the last 3 years, we've been through massive inflation.
23% for the cost of housing alone.
Yes.
And you're talking about people not able to buy. People aren't even able to rent.
Well, I was going to say the other thing to consider with that is business costs have risen at the same time, because you think about how much the cost of a loaf of bread has gone up. Well, business costs have risen in the same percentage amounts too.
Yeah.
Right?
That staff come to you and say, okay, my mortgage just went up. I need a raise. You have to pay more on hydro and other kinds of utilities. The office rent will go up every year.
Yeah.
And if you have to renew your lease, goodness knows what's going to happen, what they're going, because they can raise it to any amount when you're in a commercial tenancy.
Yeah. Well,
so there's a lot of different things that you have to consider. And then you also have to consider the cost of insurance. Insurance costs are going way up too because of a lot of volatility, climate change, various things. So these things we have to constantly take into account. So every year, like Invictus, other businesses, even the corner store, they have to go through a cost accounting.
Well, actually, you think about this, the corner store just had, if the corner store, for example, just had its rent increase, probably, maybe the corner store for the last 10 years has had a small percentage increase, but now his lease ran out. And suddenly now the landlord wants an extra 25%.
Yeah, it happens.
That's the way business operates, right?
Sometimes they will move. Sometimes they will just swallow it or negotiate.
Yep. And at the end of the day, we don't like raising our costs, but sometimes we have to.
Yep. We did a little bit, okay? Like in 2022, we did a little bit. We did not do it 2023, 24. We're trying to keep everything down, and we're still looking for ways that we can keep our costs reasonable. And we try to, just like anybody else, we try to make our services as affordable as possible by allowing people to make payments, credit card payments, different things, so that people are able to pay. Okay, so things like this, it's like this for any. It's a challenge for any business. Okay, it doesn't matter who you are, whether you're the plumber, whether you're the lawyer, whether you're the dentist, whether you're the even a psychotherapist. Okay, like some of your insurance companies will. Like I was talking to a psychotherapist the other day. She said some of these insurance companies say you're only allowed, say, $80 a session, but this person can charge privately, say, to anybody else for, say, $125 a session. Okay, so this is like where you're looking at it, and then of course the psychotherapist has to look at what are the costs of running my practice. How much do I pay for my office? How much do I pay for my secretary? How much do I pay for my insurance, my memberships, my continuing education? Okay, so there's a lot of things that go into this.
And now you're potentially into, with a professional service like ours. We can meet you, but that half-hour consultation is now only a 20-minute consultation. Hey, hi, how are you? Tell us what you want. Bye. out the door. Thank you very much, because I need the next one to come in.
Yeah. Then you start doing like the doctors, like the family doctors, how they have to see about 30 patients a day. They just go through each on a fee for
Yeah.
service
Yeah.
basis.
Okay. So let's talk about another important aspect: extra costs.
Okay. Extra costs, they could happen, and this is what we try to avoid when we're going through litigation. This is why we talk to people about litigation. Many times a client says, I want to sue. I have to sue in order to get justice. Okay? Our legal system is very complicated. And yes, many times you should sue because there's a greater chance than not that you're going to be victorious in your case. And there's probably a good to excellent chance you'll be able to collect because the other party does have money or some assets that we could seize. But there are other times that you can sue, and then it's going to be a shot in the dark. And at the end of the day, you might end up having to pay the other side's costs if you're not careful. Okay, so we often, before we go to trial, and it's a not so, and it's a type of matter where we're not certain whether we should be going to trial, and but we're not able to settle, but you're insistent to go to trial. Yes, you have a right to go to trial because you're the one who's driving the bus. But what we do is we advise you, and then we often have you sign a form saying that you're directing us to go to trial. And we have to advise you of the very possibility that there may be extra costs involved. Okay? Because at the end of the day, if you lose, you could end up paying the other side's legal costs, or part of them anyway. Okay? Which is not, I know it's not fair, but at the same time, that's why you have to be given like an adult discussion before we go to some kind of trial. Okay.
Okay. An all important question that comes up here. So, can I get help with paying for the legal fees?
Okay. There's various avenues that people can go to for things like this, but there's not a lot when it comes to the normal types of costs. Like, for example, I help people get onto ODSP or CPP, that type of thing. They get on, then that's when they will cover the costs. Sometimes they have money to pay me, sometimes they don't. Right?
Yep.
So it really depends. So when you get onto ODSP, you get a back payment, and then you have a source of funds to pay me. Okay? But there are other types of cases. Legal aid is one of the cases where, in some cases, you can get help. For example, in some criminal cases, mostly if you're threatened with jail, or if your employment is at risk, or keeping your children is at risk. They like through Family and Children's Services if they're doing this. And in some cases, if there is domestic violence involved. But there is also an income limit. Okay? Like if your income is below a certain amount, then you would qualify for legal aid. And only under certain circumstances would legal aid still grant you if your income were above it. Okay?
And
But
please,
not normal circumstances.
yeah, but please also note that, of course, for the listener, please also note that legal aid only apply. We cannot, as paralegals, apply for legal aid on your behalf.
Yeah, and
Nor
that's
can we cash in legal aid certificates.
yeah. So if you get a legal aid certificate, you have to go and see a lawyer. And
Yeah,
it's probably for a criminal matter or a family
yeah,
matter because those
yeah.
are the normal means where legal aid is usually covered. Hey,
Okay,
for things like going to small claims court, for suing your neighbor, for going after the contractor because he messed up your kitchen or your roofing job, legal aid is not normally available.
okay. Another one that might well be available and might help you: union dues. Now, obviously, to get to get your union dues to help you, unions to help you pay, you've got to be paying union dues, and you've got to be a member of the union.
Like, say, for instance, there are some unions that have what they call a legal fund,
Yeah.
or a social justice fund, sometimes they call it. And say if you're going through a landlord tenant matter or you're going through a family matter, they have a legal office where a person who is a member of the union can go to and say, look, I'm being sued, or I need to sue, and then they assess it, and then they send you to someone who is a lawyer or a paralegal who can take your case. Yes, we do accept union representation for legal fees. You'll do that. There's also insurance, like certain types of insurance companies. Like, say, if you're a landlord, okay, get yourself involved with landlord insurance. Landlord insurance would often cover your legal fees too, or some of them anyway. Hey, that's another way of getting some legal help that way. Hey, because I've gotten paid by insurance companies for my work on behalf of landlords as well.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things that, just to kind of open your eyes, there's different ways of getting these things done. Okay. And then there is also maybe unconventional ways, like if you have, if you're a paralegal who's maybe contracted to work with, say, a tenants association, and you happen
Oh,
to be a
that's true.
tenant, you can
Yeah.
get some coverage that way too.
And the other thing that we do is monthly payment of a retainer. So, so if we're asking you for $3,000, that it's a lot easier to make 6 payments of $500 than it is to come up with $3,000 all at once,
Yeah,
for example.
exactly. And this is it. Like, I talk to people about this, and I try to explain to people at the beginning, okay, because of the degree of experience. Like, Peter's a trained barrister and from UK, and he's got significant experience in business, and he's come down here and he's worked here, and then he's become my business partner, and he's done a significant amount of work, especially in the municipal and litigation sector. And myself, I have 30 years experience. We're not exactly the least expensive on the map, but you get experience, you get knowledge, and we also have other licensees in our office that can also provide services. And some of them have skills in other areas that Peter and I might not have. So
Yep.
this is very important when you go in and you select a firm. And what we try to do is we try to make things work out for you as much as we can financially. Like, we visited a client today who told us, he said, well, I don't know if I can afford all of that. And I said, okay, let's just figure this out. Okay. And we'll just kind of work with you. So what it is we'll be billing this person hourly. When we work hourly, we'll just indicate what we've done and what we're going to do
Yep.
next.
Yep.
Okay. And we'll just do that as long as they can do this. And that could be over a period of a few months.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
that
yeah.
way that person is not going to be put out a whole lot of money. So that we're trying to
Yep.
make that easy on that particular client. So this is how we try to work things in people's favor. And you always can talk to your legal provider about that if you feel that your legal fees are an issue.
Okay. Then there is another question here that's important that everybody know. When will I be billed?
We bill usually at the time when, like, you get your retainer in, then we work on your behalf. And then if there's some top up required or additional funds required, we'll send you a bill, a statement of account if we're asking for more money, because we track everything through our legal system. And then we also ask you, and then also if we completed the job, we send you a statement. So that type of thing. And then there's others too that we just do work on an ongoing basis and bill you by the hour. Okay. So every so often we'd send you a bill. Right? Sometimes we would talk to you about it, if you want to be billed monthly or every 2 weeks or whatever's easier for you, we can do it. Depending on the type of action and work we are doing on your behalf. So
Yep.
then we just arrange to send you an invoice. Okay, we just send you an invoice out by email, and it'll have that, and we would expect payments fairly soon after that. And this is how we try to do things on that. We try to keep track of it the best we can, and it's kind of hard when we're all working. All the licensees are all working on different files, and including the partners, and we're working on doing some changes on that. But it's a very thing there. And sometimes when we do our retainers, when we talk to people, sometimes when we bill you, it's written into the retainer. Like if we
Yeah.
got a longer term retainer, like say if we're doing several different matters for you, maybe we bill you once a month on all matters that we've done for you. Okay, so you're aware of all the money that you're spending on us, and we also inform you of how much we have left if some of it's in trust, or if you just have to pay, if you're paying as you go. So there's a lot of different ways that we do things.
Okay. All right. Then the other question becomes one, and the client's got a right to ask this. So, what happens if I disagree with the amount I've been charged?
Okay, you have a right to ask for details and find out how much the bill is. And people have come and we've kind of reviewed it with us, and then we have a meeting with the person. Okay, it happens sometimes. Okay, like I had a couple times where people have really disagreed and were totally disenchanted. Okay, and they just go off and tell everybody, "Oh, these firms cost us a fortune." And then they go into another paralegal's firm and says, "I got to go after that paralegal because they charged me too much." And then that other paralegal that they went to and says, "Okay, I need a $2,000 retainer to go after that one." So, I mean, the thing is, this is why, like, if you are a legal practitioner, it's best to try to explain this at the very beginning about what the cost might run up to and what it might be, and to also make sure that the details are put
And,
into your statements of account.
and for example, there's a few things I would say actually about certain types of legal situations. If you're a landlord, well, a friend of mine always gives the advice, and I'm not going to disagree with this. If you're a landlord, basically engage a paralegal. You might not need them all the time. In fact, you hope you don't need them all the time.
Yeah,
But will come a time when you will need a paralegal. So engage them and pay a retainer down, and basically that'll help you. You help the relationship with having a paralegal is that you, as a landlord, you can now go to that paralegal and say, "Hey, my paralegal, I need help with this, whatever the legal problem is."
exactly. Yep,
And it's easy to jump in and say evicting a person, but a lot of the time, actually, that isn't the
yeah,
main
sometimes that's
intention
not
of
the
what a
issue.
landlord's doing, right?
Sometimes that's not the issue. Sometimes the tenant's complaining or the tenant had filed
Yeah.
an
Oh yeah.
application, and you
Yeah.
want to be able to give an intelligent response and minimize damage.
Yeah.
Like I had one landlord who I've worked with for 20 years, and now she's recently retired and she's sold off all her properties. And when you start doing that, that's when all the problems start, especially today. But this is why you need a paralegal, because things happen when
Yeah.
you try to sell your property, when you try to move back into your property, or you want one of your children to take your property, or or when a tenant is just, or you still have a tenant and you're okay and they're paying rent and everything, but then all of a sudden they get a flood, you know? Like, what do I do about that? Like, what's my responsibilities? There's a
Yeah.
lot of things you need to know, because being a landlord is a business. And you
Yeah.
can't. Yeah, and some people, there are some companies and individual landlords that we do have as ongoing clients and
Yeah.
that we work with.
Oh yeah.
And they're wonderful people. I get to know them over the years, and they come by. We say hello to them. Great people. And
Yeah.
it's just unfortunate when I see certain things happen. But unfortunately, as I said before, we're dealing with human beings, and human beings are about as unpredictable as anything else. Hey, and when different human beings interact and they have a conflict, things happen. In
Yeah.
terms of disagreeing with the legal bill, sometimes if a bill is really seems excessively high, hey, it's usually you can go to small claims court, or you can go and have a bill assessed before the assessment office in the Superior Court of Justice. Okay, and then
Well,
they have a hearing, and they'll look at the details of the bill, and the provider has a chance to send them back why they charge the person that much and so
Yeah.
forth. But this is why when you write a retainer and then you have your initial meeting, to try to be as detailed as possible so that the client is not going to be surprised with what bill you give in the end.
And of course, the key factor is that, hey, the moment you pay your first retainer check, do expect that a paralegal is going to work on your file, especially if you say it's urgent, it must be done, I need it done tomorrow or
It's an
yesterday.
emergency. It should have been done yesterday.
Yeah,
They call you 24 times in a day. It's got
yeah.
to be done. It got to be
And the
done.
point being is, if you've just if you've just told your legal representative that, and now you're telling them, hey, give me my money back, yeah, there isn't going to be all of the money that you've just
There's
paid
going to be
in
some money
is going
spent
to be
on the project.
partially spent.
So they're going to do an invoice and send you
Yeah,
back the balance of your retainer.
yeah,
Okay, so that's it. Lesson learned. Next time, don't rush them unless you want to say, okay, I'm going to be thinking about this a little more carefully, and I'm
yeah.
not going to be rushing you, or just tell the paralegal saying, okay, I'm paying you the retainer now, just keep it, but I need to think about a week or so, before I tell you what I want you to do with it. And that's
Yeah,
fine too, you know,
yeah,
because this is your
yeah,
case. You're the one who's
exactly.
driving the bus.
Exactly. As much as us legal professionals think that we're in control of the case, we're not. We are the client's servants at the end of the day.
Don't say that, Peter, because some people will take that seriously.
Well, okay, but we serve our clients, is what I meant to
Yeah,
say.
yeah.
Yeah,
We provide as public service,
yeah,
okay?
for our clients.
And as I said, like anybody else, like if you go to your dentist, they provide a public service. If you go to your vet, they'll provide a public service. And if your vet's any good, they'll talk to you ahead of time before they start doing work on your behalf and billing you tons of money. Okay?
Okay. All right. So thank you, Angela, for all the comments on billings. And I just want to remind everybody, if you need to contact Invictus Legal LLP, you can do so at 905-688-5598, or email Angela at weareinvictus.legal, or me at Peter at weareinvictus.legal. And you can visit our website, which is https://weareinvictus.legal. All
Yep.
right, and the final slide I have is for Angela.
Yes, yes. I have my favorite part. Okay. What you heard on Spin Legal today and in any other previous sessions that you might have sat in or have seen in pre-recorded versions is not legal advice. Anything we say on this show is not legal advice. Even if it sounds like this might be applicable to you if you're talking about a landlord-tenant situation, even if it sounds very much like your case, it does not apply to you in terms of legal advice. So you can't go running around to a court or to someone else and say, I just heard on Spin Legal that you can't do that. No, you can't. So what you need to do is, if you need something specific to advise you, is that you need to contact your own paralegal or your own lawyer, or you can contact us, okay, if you don't know anybody, or if you want to contact us or someone, okay, to get your own legal advice. And that way they can tailor what you need to hear for your specific situation.
All right, and I think we can thank all our listeners for coming and being with us for the last 50 minutes, and we shall see you again next Wednesday with a new episode of Spin Legal. I can't tell you what we're going to be discussing next Wednesday because we haven't decided.
We don't even know.
Not yet. No, we the last couple of weeks we've known in advance, but not this one.
Yeah, we planned 4 sessions in advance, so we did that, but now we got to set up another set. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Bye.